Would you be happier if tomorrow's to-do list vanished and all you had to think about was breakfast, fresh water, and a safe place to sleep? That simple question hits at a debate that has divided thinkers for centuries, and it's far more relevant to your daily life than it first sounds. Anthropologists have found that many hunter-gatherer groups spent roughly 4 to 6 hours a day securing food, leaving the rest of the day free. By contrast, modern workers often spend 8 hours on the clock and still answer emails at night. That gap is the first surprise. More technology and convenience have not necessarily bought us more leisure. Philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau seized on this contrast in the 1700s. He argued that early humans, living in what he called the state of nature, were mostly cooperative, guided by basic needs and a healthy sense of self-respect. Civilization, he said, introduced status games. Once someone could own more land or prettier clothes, everyone started measuring themselves against everyone else, chasing approval rather than contentment. Rousseau labeled this craving amour-propre, the kind of self-esteem that depends on likes, followers, or the car in your neighbor's driveway. Not everyone agreed. Thomas Hobbes pictured a law-free world as a place where life would be nasty, brutish, and short. Without speed limits, he thought, the roadway of human interaction would be one long demolition derby, so a strong referee government was essential. More complexity does not automatically mean more happiness. Civilization has given us hospitals, hot showers, and video calls with relatives on the other side of the planet. It has also brought deadlines, social comparison, and 24-hour news that can make the world feel overwhelming. To make sense of the trade-offs, think about 2 everyday scenes. Neighborhood potluck. No one is paid, yet most people bring a dish and help clean up. That's Rousseau's trust and cooperation in action. Rush hour traffic. Hundreds of strangers follow speed limits and stoplights so everyone gets home alive. That's Hobbes's argument for clear rules. Both scenes work because people balance freedom with some structure. The question is where that balance should sit for a life that feels satisfying instead of exhausting. So next time you feel buried by notifications or tempted to romanticize the good old days, remember the key takeaway. Happiness hinges less on the sheer amount of progress and more on how we use it. Choose tools and rules that cut stress rather than add it. Simplicity may not mean abandoning modern life, but it does mean deciding which parts of modern life truly earn their place on your plate. Yet the debate goes even deeper when we look at the roots of inequality. Anthropologist David Graeber and archaeologist David Wengrow challenge the idea that humanity passed through clear-cut stages, like moving from primitive tribes to farming, then to cities. They argue that early societies weren't as linear or predictable as history books suggest. Some ancient communities rotated between different forms of leadership depending on the season. During planting or harvest, a strong leader might organize labor, but in the winter, the same community could shift to a more equal, collective structure. This flexible setup breaks the common idea that once hierarchy began, it stuck. People chose when and how to organize their society, often in creative ways. Many of us think we're stuck with the systems we live in, endless work weeks, rigid hierarchies, or constant digital demands. But if ancient people could rethink their social structures regularly, maybe we can too. Imagine if your workplace functioned more like a seasonal camp, structured when needed, fluid when it makes sense. Or if neighborhoods could shift between organized events and casual gatherings, depending on what people actually want. These aren't fantasies. They're ideas drawn from real historical examples. The point isn't to idealize the past. It's to realize that humans have always had more social imagination than we give ourselves credit for. Complexity doesn't have to mean rigidity, and civilization doesn't have to mean giving up autonomy. So the next time you hear someone say, "That's just how things are," it might be worth asking, is it really? Or is it just one version of how things could be? Freedom isn't just about individual choice. It's also about the power to reshape the rules themselves. Graeber and Wengrow point out that in many early cities, there's evidence people experimented with different systems of governance before settling into any one structure. Some ancient urban centers had no signs of kings or ruling elites at all. No palaces, no monuments to power. Yet they still built impressive public spaces and maintained large populations. That challenges the long-held belief that complex societies always require top-down control. This idea matters now more than ever. Today, many people assume that large organizations or governments must run in strict hierarchies to stay efficient. But history shows that coordination and cooperation don't always require control from above. They can also emerge through shared values, common goals, and community-led decision-making. Consider open-source software projects. Thousands of people around the world contribute voluntarily, without a boss telling them what to do. They create tools that power websites, businesses, and communication platforms. It's a modern example of how large-scale collaboration can work without rigid authority. Or think about mutual aid networks during times of crisis, like the early months of the pandemic in 2020. When systems faltered, people stepped in to help each other with groceries, medicine, and emotional support. No central command, just a shared sense of responsibility. We often underestimate our ability to organize ourselves. The structures around us aren't fixed, they're built. And what's built can be rebuilt. Social systems, like software or schedules, can be updated when they no longer serve us well. So rather than seeing history as a straight path from freedom to control, it may be more accurate and more useful to view it as a series of experiments. Experiments in how to live, how to share, and how to decide. And the most human thing of all may be the ability to step back, look at the system, and ask, what do we want to try next? Freedom isn't just about escape from authority. It's also about the freedom to participate in shaping your world. That might sound abstract, but it shows up in everyday life more than we realize. For example, think about your local school board, tenant association, or city council meeting. These aren't glamorous spaces, and they often seem slow or frustrating. But they represent a kind of freedom Rousseau would recognize, the ability to take part in the decisions that shape your daily environment. That's a very different kind of freedom than just being left alone. Graeber and Wengrow emphasize this distinction by reminding us that many past societies valued refusal as a right. People could walk away from systems that didn't work for them. Entire communities moved, withdrew cooperation, or reorganized their social roles to push back against coercive leaders. Freedom meant the ability to say no, and to have real alternatives when you did. This runs counter to how we often think today. A job offer, a contract, a housing situation. These might be technically choices, but if the only alternative is debt or instability, how free is that choice really? True freedom, these thinkers argue, includes the option to shape the conditions that define your choices, not just pick between two bad ones. Many workers now advocate for workplace democracy, like co-ops or employee-owned businesses. The idea isn't just better pay. It's having a real voice in how things operate. It's about replacing passive acceptance with active participation. Humans have always had the capacity to rethink how we live together. We are not locked into hierarchy, burnout, or inequality. Our ancestors weren't passive victims of history. They were creative problem solvers. And so are we. The past doesn't show one inevitable path. It offers a toolbox of social possibilities. The question isn't whether change is possible. It's whether we'll choose to imagine better systems and have the courage to try them. If there's one lasting lesson from all of this, it's that history isn't a ladder we climb. It's a field of choices. And what we often think of as progress may actually be just one path among many. In the final stretch of their argument, Graeber and Wengrow challenge the myth that once a society chooses farming, cities, or government, it can never go back. In fact, many groups throughout history shifted between ways of living. Some farmed part of the year and returned to foraging. Others lived in cities without kings or armies. People made and remade their social lives in ways that suited their needs. This flexibility is a powerful reminder that social systems are not permanent. Bureaucracies, economies, even cultural norms, they all change over time, often faster than we expect. The key is remembering that these things are designed by people. And if something's designed, it can be redesigned. Think about how quickly remote work transformed office culture. In a matter of weeks, assumptions about how and where we have to work were overturned. Or how new voting systems, like ranked choice ballots or citizens' assemblies, are being tested in places that want more representative decision-making. These aren't utopian dreams. They're real examples of people trying out new models. What connects all these efforts is a simple principle. We don't have to settle for systems just because they've been around a long time. The power to question and improve our social environment is deeply human. So instead of asking, what's the next stage of progress, a better question might be, what kind of life do we actually want? That means rethinking how we work, live, share, and govern. Not because we're nostalgic for the past, but because the past shows us what's possible. The biggest shift may be in mindset, from believing history controls us, to realizing we are always shaping history ourselves. Let's go one step further. What does all this mean for the future? If history shows us that social structures are flexible, and that people once moved in and out of systems freely, then it's worth asking why that seems harder today. One reason may be scale. We now live in enormous global networks, economies, governments, supply chains, where no single person feels like they can make a dent. But Graeber and Wengrow push back on the idea that size has to mean control from the top. They highlight that some large ancient cities thrived for centuries without strong central rulers or elite classes. Instead of concentrating power, these societies built horizontal networks, many small parts working together through coordination, not command. It's a different way to think about how complex societies can operate. We already see hints of this model today. Decentralized technologies like blockchain, federated platforms like Mastodon, or community-run energy projects show that large-scale collaboration doesn't always require a hierarchy. These examples are still developing, but they challenge the idea that big must mean rigid. The systems we live in should be judged not just by how advanced they are, but by how much freedom, well-being, and adaptability they provide. If a system locks people into stress, isolation, or unfairness, then it may be sophisticated, but it's not working well. Being modern doesn't always mean being better. Progress isn't measured just by new tools, taller buildings, or faster services. It's measured by whether people have more agency, more time, and more say in the world they live in. So what can you take away from all of this? That inequality isn't inevitable, it's built, and it can be unbuilt. That freedom isn't just about personal choice. It's also about shaping the systems around you. That progress isn't a straight line. It's a series of decisions, experiments, and course corrections. History is not a script. It's a draft. And we're still writing it. Being aware of history isn't just about understanding where we come from. It's about reclaiming the freedom to imagine where we're going. One reason this matters is because many modern challenges, climate change, economic instability, mental health crises, feel overwhelming. It's easy to believe these problems are too big, too baked in, too structural to fix. But the work of Graeber, Wengrow, and others reminds us that human beings have always adapted, resisted, and reorganized when faced with major change. In fact, some of the most important breakthroughs in history didn't come from elites or formal institutions. They came from ordinary people making new choices in how to live together. Farmers choosing to share land. Families forming collectives. Entire communities deciding that hierarchy wasn't worth the cost. Innovation, in this sense, wasn't about invention. It was about values. This is where we often miss the point. We look to the future as a place that will be built by engineers, politicians, or corporate strategists. But real social change comes from ordinary people recognizing they have a say, and that society is not a machine we ride, but a set of agreements we can constantly revise. The real opportunity isn't to predict what's next. It's to participate in what comes next. Ask, what do I accept just because it's always been that way? What systems around me could be redesigned to work better for more people? Who benefits from the status quo, and who doesn't? And most importantly, what role do I want to play? This is not about tearing everything down or returning to some imagined past. It's about understanding that the shape of society is always in motion, and that your voice, your choices, your values matter in shaping it. We aren't stuck. We're just told we are. And once we stop believing that, almost anything is possible.